Thank you, Phyllis, for the kind words. Appreciate that. So, like she said, my name is Craig Arthur. I'm an associate professor of practice in the Academy of Transdisciplinary Studies.
Freddie Page, assistant professor in civil and environmental engineering.
All right, so we're going to talk about this program we've been doing. It's hard to believe, but it's actually our ninth academic year of VTDITC Hip Hop Studies at Virginia Tech. So just a little bit of context, hip hop studies has existed kind of off and on since 1999 at Virginia Tech. The first class was offered, credit-bearing class was offered in the Department of English. Dr. Kwame Harrison, big influence on the program, actually offered a class in, I think, 03, 04. I was in it way back then, and it kind of opened up the possibilities for what we're doing now 20 years later. But here's our mission statement. I'll give you a minute to read it. And at the bottom, we're going to have a whole bunch of different murals. We've created about 12 public murals at this point over the course of time. And this one is from last year. It was it's kind of the great man history theory of hip hop's origin. But if you're going to say there is one date, a lot of people cite, 1973 as the official, first hip hop party, right? So last year we did this mural right here. This was by Good Homie Signs. He's an artist out of North Carolina that's worked with us quite a bit. All right. So what we've done over these last 9 years, we've done over 1,100 community engaged events. That looks like workshops in local schools, partnering with folks like Phyllis and Senny to participate in Science Festival. That looks like, we do a seminar series once a month. We've done, I think we're on the 55th one of those, something like that, yeah. We also do a weekly radio show. Lots of stuff. One thing I'm really proud of and really happy we sustained is for the past 8 years, every week, we've had free open studio sessions for anybody that's interested to come by. We started doing those in the library, in Newman Library, but thanks to ICAT, we have a space over in the media building. It's 103 Media Building, True School Studios, just right across the street over here, where anybody can come by Friday 2 to 5 and get hands-on instruction and guidance on how to realize whatever you're trying to do, essentially, as long as it relates to audio and visual. And we also have been lucky enough to interact with about 35,000 people. That's about 3,000 people a year, I guess, give or take. We've won a couple awards. It's not what it's about, but hip-hop is still, I kind of equate it to, jazz studies in the 70s and 80s. Like hip-hop studies it's been around since the early 90s as a field of study, but it's really, still to a lot of people in higher ed and academia, it's a unique or new thing. So those awards help us sometimes navigate those conversations with people that maybe don't get it, So it's not why we do it, but it also helps make the case. And then another thing that I've really enjoyed, and we were actually playing just earlier, an example of one of them, is digital scholarship and also analog scholarship projects. That can look like recorded music, that can look like journal articles, that can look like all different sorts of things. So this is our most recent mural. This was done, in August. And this is also by Good Homie Signs, and it's Studies at VT. So we got hip hop last year, and now we got Studies at VT.
So I'm here to talk to you a little bit more about looking forward and what's next. That's what I think the energy of these play dates are about: connecting, building community, doing more with each other. So we're definitely looking for more folks to help us with regular assessment, help the world better understand what is the effectiveness of these projects and initiatives, especially when you start thinking about the innovation and creativity that's involved. It's really important to help folks understand, again, how does it make sense? How much resources should we continue to put into it? Who else should be engaged? What is the impact? Especially on campuses sometimes where, again, certain cultures and certain identities aren't as appreciated, right? Again, this type of program can really help students, again, understand who they are, what they can be, and why they should be innovative. Again, understanding intentionality and what we add and subtract, again, it goes back into the assessment. We're not just out here like freestyling all the time, even though I'm relatively good at freestyling and improving. We are very thoughtful and put a lot of time and energy in any of our engagements. We appreciate all the time that people give us as well. Like, we really think about y'all coming here. You could have been anywhere else in the world right now, chose to be here. Really thinking about, again, reciprocity and creating really good relationships, especially when we do that outreach work Phyllis was talking about. Again, UpProsm and the Virginia Tech brand is really big and has a lot of energy and history connected to it. And we are really thoughtful about what does it mean when we have VTDITC on our gear and the VT branding, et cetera. Even though we had some really interesting branding stories. If anyone's interested in branding stories, you know, looking at that Hoagie bird right there. So yeah, again, thinking about what community engagement means, what kind of impact that we have on communities, but also what impact they're having on us and the students. So I think that's something that also gets underappreciated and underconsidered. Sometimes our students come to Blacksburg from wherever they're from and don't get a chance to connect with the local region and Appalachia and all the really great things that they should be connecting to, not just campus. Craig's starting off with some classes next semester, kind of highlighted that a little bit already. Really excited about seeing what that's going to look like, especially in the online space. Craig's not as comfortable with the online space sometimes, but it's so dope to, again, see him jump into it, make the class more accessible and reachable for folks. We had a lot of great help from Mandy Wright and Spencer Bennington as well on that. And again, getting out to other institutions, making sure Virginia Tech's well known for this type of work, but also connecting with our friends at like UVA, VSU, et cetera. And then again, more creative scholarship. We're here to create, provide deliverables.
So now we just got time for Q&A, and also just give you a heads up. We have our next seminar is going to be next Thursday. I felt like that was so long ago, but it's not even a week ago now. But I'm sorry, so far from now. But yeah, so we've actually got two alumni from our alums from our program. John Kabongo, he's a MC out of Toronto, and he graduated in 2021 and was a member of the VTDITC community when he was here, and still is a member of the community, even being in Canada now. And then David Kim, David graduated in 2020, and he's a recording engineer, music producer, and he also co-owns a studio in Richmond. And they're going to come and just talk about, you know, their stories and just advice for independent artists and folks trying to, you know, make a living out of their craft. So we're really looking forward to that. That's going to be Thursday, next Thursday night. So it's going to be over in True School Studios over in the media building. So yeah, so I'll just pause for a second. It's really hard for me to do, but I'll try to be quiet for a second and see if anybody's got any questions.
Hi there. I got a question for you. My name is Damon. I'm a creative technology student here at my first semester at Virginia Tech.
Okay.
And I'm really intrigued by this great music you had playing when we came in.
Yeah, thank you.
I also really like the visuals that you guys have. So as a school visual arts student, I'm kind of curious about who helped you with the murals that you've done.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the content that you've shown us here on these slides. Who's helping you with that kind of stuff?
Okay, definitely. Yeah, so we have students that typically, we call them digital storytellers. So they help with our online presence. They also help with all our graphic design, and they're undergraduate students from. And over the course of the years, we've had, about 4 or 5? Yeah, not all of them have been graphic design majors, but the current one we have now is Tim Hickey, and he's a sophomore in graphic design, and he's got all the flyers over here on the table. He's designed those. As far as like the murals and the logo, that was designed by a North Carolina artist named Good Homie Signs is what he goes by. He's got a couple different personas for different settings, but yeah, the one that he goes by in this setting is Good Homie Signs, and yeah, he's done our logo. He's also done probably about 80% of the murals. We've had a couple other artists, 2 guys locally did a mural for us at our last aerosol art workshop. And then we also had Mimi, who was a Richmond-based graffiti aerosol artist. It was really interesting. Worked with us a few years ago as well. But yeah, that's who does the the vast majority of the visual, element of what we do. And as far as the music, that was a project we just released, and by release, put it up on Bandcamp. I guess it's 2024, right? But this past Tuesday, and that comes out of, we do a annual artist residency, first week in May, where we invite a lot of people that we work with just to come and spend a week in Blacksburg, spend a week in the studio, and we try to create as much as we can. And that's 4 songs that came out of that week. And that was actually mixed by a guy named Tim Donovan, who he's in Hickory, North Carolina, which is my hometown, but he's I guess kind of paid his dues, cut his teeth in New York in the 90s. And he also mixed a couple songs you might have heard of. He did Britney Spears' Oops, I Did It Again, and the Pokemon original soundtrack for that Pokemon movie, as well as The Roots and all sorts of other folks. But it's funny, when we talk to students, a lot of times they're like, "Oh, who cares about The Roots? He worked with Pokemon, So, but yeah, so that's a lot of the visual and audio elements of what we do. But we're always creating something. We try to, we've got this great space that we've built. We try to use it as much as we can. So, this Friday or this afternoon, 2 to 5, if you want to come by the studio, you can kind of see it in action. It's right across the street, 103 Media Building. But yeah. All right, cool. Any other questions?
So I'm trying to diversify my music palette a little bit more.
Okay.
I probably don't listen to much hip-hop. I know it's a very broad,
Right.
range of music, but is there like an album you'd recommend if I wanted to kind of introduce myself into a new kind of genre?
Oh, man, that's heavy. I would recommend, just because it's timely, John Kabongo just put out a record, 2 weeks ago? And it's called Still Rich, and he's a Virginia Tech alum and just a really talented MC. It's a really cool album because it kind of tells his personal story, I think. Freddie, what do you think?
So shameless plug, I also say listen to Show Improve a couple times. But yeah, John, one reason we really liked him, like him in general, is the versatility. He's always experimental, always willing to try something different, beat-wise, production-wise, tonality with his voice. So it's a really good album to just experience, like, hey, okay, this same person can rap in a lot of different ways and can sound a lot of different ways. But also his life story influences that, and he speaks on himself a lot. So his brother was eligible for the NBA draft and things like that, and that's how it starts off, and that didn't go the way they wanted it to go due to like eligibility issues and all of that. But then eventually he becomes a basketball phenom and plays ball at Tech, but then again, that doesn't work out the way they want it to. And again, what does it mean for him to continue as an artist and live in Toronto, but also have family from the Congo, right? Yeah. But then, come to the States early for high school, this, that, and the third. So it's a really great journey to listen to and experience. Should we play a song before they get the next question? Like maybe play another one? Like let them actually listen? Because they were talking at first. Yeah.
All right, so maybe you can play.
And any of them.
We're going to get you started right now, Nick.
You might recognize one of the voices on this. Yeah, so this is the second track on Show Improve, the EP we just released. I don't know, maybe you'll recognize one of the voices, I don't know.
Awesome.
That's how the game works. Oh, say my name, though. And do this thing, bro. How the odd one out get popular if it's the mode that makes it to the industry's copier. Or maybe it's so big-headed it gravitates philosophers and gets a bunch of followers and taps into your ocular. The nerve of individuals mocking masses, the pitiful attempts to be unique in the search of finding residuals of lifetime after lifetime. In the lifeline after lifeline, trapped, drowning in beats. I probably shouldn't even write rhymes. Save the paper, make it sail for the next boat. The hull is full of dead bodies, no matter what it floats. Pontoon, platoon, even black or maroon. Ain't no roses in the park, I'm in the back with the goons. The lookouts whistle, front. Some people act like it's fun. Ride simple, crash on the pun, be heavy with drums. Simple, I'm making it clear to climb my ship in low gear. author, blogger, academic, or the first in the year. I could quickly cook up on the radio hit. That would get the views, I would get all the clicks. Not to be a star, just to give you a fix. I'm going viral and sick, that's how the game goes. I could quickly cook up on the radio hit. That would get the views, I would get all the clicks. Not to be a star, just to give you a fix. I'm going viral and sick, that's how the game goes.
That's half the song, at least, just for interest of time. But you can check out the whole project. It's vtditc.bandcamp.com. It's a free download. We haven't really figured out how to navigate the whole streaming services as a Virginia Tech entity. So if anybody's got any connections in, I don't know, legal counsel or something, you know what is. All right, cool, we'll talk. All right, so any other questions?
Sorry. I thought Dylan was saying he knew the legal. I was like, really?
Hey, great presentation. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the hardware and the software that you're using out there.
Yeah, for sure. So what we try to do in our space is we try to prepare the students that come in, and also community members, for what they're going to encounter in commercial studios, right? So like the vast majority of the students that come into True School Studios have never recorded anywhere except maybe like, you know, their friends' house or their apartment or dorm room or whatever. So, and it's been super dope. I mean, I've been DJing since '97, and it's been really cool to see how much more accessible that whole world is, you know, over that course of time. Like, you get a $100, $150, $200 audio interface, $80 condenser mic, you know, and yeah, and you can get going. But so what we use a lot of times for as far as digital audio workstations is we're still trying to train students up on Pro Tools. But we find a lot of them come in preferring Logic. FL Studio is super popular too, you know. But yeah, Pro Tools, Ableton, and Logic are what we have on our computer in the studio. And as far as DJ equipment, I'm an old vinyl guy. We still got turntables over there, but DJ controllers have, you know, saved our backs. I don't have to lug records around anymore, you know. So got a wide variety of different, you know, tools for DJing. And then as far as music production, like creating instrumentals, creating beats, whatever have you, I have a preference for hardware. I really like Akai MPCs and stuff like that. But a lot of the students that come in are using FL Studio. They are using Logic to make their beats. So we have that available for them as well. So yeah, I mean, I personally think our space should be providing access to tools that maybe they wouldn't have access to otherwise. So we've got, you know, like Theremin in there. We've got we can't quite afford a Moog Model D, but we got the Behringer ripoff. You know, we got stuff like that for them as well. Freddie, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I think one thing I really like in our studio is our mixer. And having the students understand like routing as an engineer, I think it's really important. Not even just like an audio engineer, as a civil engineer, helping them understand like systems. I also really appreciate just the space in general. So we're fighting really hard or working really hard to get some acoustic treatment so that, again, students can really understand the importance of like accurately hearing sounds, and then working our way more towards spatialization with Eric right here. We did a Sankofa project, so we had them experience a new DAW, but also just a new dimension of like what it can mean to experience music. So yeah, again, I really just think the process is really critical for us at helping them think through, I want to create something, I want to express myself, and then really importantly after that, I want to experience it with someone. So we are like really trying to look into the legality of what it means for us to use resources and then put music out on Apple Music and other revenue-based platforms. Also just to show the students like, hey, this is how much money actually comes out on the back end of some of this stuff, right? So, you know, that might not be the best business model for you to just chase getting a bunch of streams. But on top of that, again, you can go perform in your community and make revenue off that, this, that, and the third. So, yeah, we're really big on, again, not only looking at the tools and resources, but very much so how you use them and how they fit your narrative as a creator.
One thing to add to that, I mean, I think the most valuable resource, this extends to when I worked in, you know, this thought came from when I worked in libraries. The most valuable resource in any setting is the people, right? So, like, trying to build a sense of community around creative practices. I mean, I think a lot of, it's been interesting to me because I feel like the culture has kind of shifted where to do hip hop, 20 years ago, you had to be in community. Now it's so much more individualistic and isolated, right? And so trying to create spaces and talk about like how to give feedback in a way that's constructive and that sort of thing. So that I think is the most important piece of equipment we got is the community, So yeah. All right. So any other questions? Any other thoughts?
I have one.
Okay.
Sorry, occasionally I get,
Yeah.
everybody else has done some too. So you talked about the sense of community, which I think is as a key part of what you're doing. And Freddie, thank you for mentioning the connections to engineering. Can you talk about the disciplines that are represented in the studio and how your work adds into the disciplines? And also, second part, just because I think it's so important to say, talk about how the students who are part of your community, the kinds of things that they say about the ITC, because I love what they say.
I'm going to pass the mic to Freddie. I think he can.
Yeah, so again, going back to that point about assessment, we really need some more help tracking all this data. But we did start asking students what majors they're representing, and it's a really diverse spread. Like, we're across the board. You name a major, they've probably been in our program, whether it be a seminar, workshop, or whatever. Making more faculty collaborations, again, that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this. Like Spencer Bennington, for example, bringing his English students to our programming helped us recognize, there's a bunch of general engineers out there that would love to come to this type of stuff, right? It gives them another lens to look through when they're working on English or writing when they're scared to write, right? Or scared to think about the humanities. But yeah, we're across the board. I think in terms of, what was the second question?
What kinds of things do your students say about being part of the DITC community? Yeah, so that, again, goes back to that point about I was saying, like, certain people's identities or points of view aren't always appreciated as much as they should be in the Virginia Tech experience or any university experience, right? Sometimes, again, you've got the main dominant culture or whatever. Digging the Crates helps them experience and focus on, like, hey, I can be myself, but in community with others, and people appreciate me for the unique things that I like to do. And again, part of that is self-expression. So, and sometimes it's not that, like, a student doesn't fit the VT narrative, it's that they haven't expressed and presented their narrative enough for the VT narrative to connect, right? So, again, we really appreciate some of the culture that we've set up so that students, they can give feedback to each other and learn how to critique someone. So, like, I do some research on creativity and, like, looking at engineering students versus architecture students. And, like, the space that the architecture students have and the processes that they go through to do the same type of design of a building is so different that, again, at the end of it, they're very creative and willing to talk to each other and poke and prod and give each other suggestions, while the engineering students are very much like, oh, you told me I'm wrong? Oh, my goodness, I'm a failure. It's over. Like, we can't be friends. We're arch enemies for the rest of our lives, right? So again, I really enjoy working with Digging the Crates because it allows me to, like, really try out different modes of teaching and different processes, and also sometimes, again, get the engineering students out of the typical classroom setting they're used to, come into our setting, and then now they finally are willing to draw that diagram I asked them to draw 100 times. Like, I get you can do the math in your head, you're a genius, you got a 1400 on the SAT, cool, right? But if you don't start drawing your diagrams for your systems when they get overly complex, you're gonna fail, or the people working with you can't do what you're doing without that diagram. So Digging the Crates really helps them recognize that and appreciate it and feel seen, and they love working in a context that they also engage with on a regular basis. Hip hop is now the most dominant music, most popular music across streaming platforms, and they really, again, like something that they can engage with on a regular basis, so.
I guess just one anecdote. We had a student working with us who was aerospace engineering student, and when we first got our board, we brought it in and we were setting it up, and it's got like 24 different channels running into it, and he's like, who knows how to work this? And I'm thinking, like, don't you design spaceships? Like, what I'm saying? So sometimes you just gotta, force students to get a little uncomfortable and have space to kind of fail and create in an environment where, anybody that does any sort of creative practice knows that it's just the only way to do something great is to do a lot of mediocre stuff millions and millions of times, right? So, yeah. All right. So any other questions, any other thoughts?
We are at time, so we're going to go ahead and close out. I think you guys are going to be here for a few minutes to if people have questions and want to chat through some of the technology here, thank you for bringing that with. It actually looks like rocket science to me. So I just want to thank you all again for sharing your story, sharing your work. An anecdote I heard at another outreach was a student said, I was thinking about leaving Virginia Tech. I did not feel that I fit in here at all, and I found the digging in the crates, and now I found my people, and I'm ready to do my work. And that also is a super, we need this. Thank you. And thank you for bringing the academic work to it and for all of the outreach that you do. It's just really great. So we'll be back here next week with more donuts and more coffee. Same time, same place. Have a great week and weekend. We'll see you next time.
All right, thank y'all. Have a good day. Good week.